The first sign something was wrong was the text message that wasn't meant for me. Can't wait for tonight. He's leaving for Chicago at 5. My wife's phone had pinged while she was in the shower, and I'd glanced at it reflexively as I set my coffee mug down on the nightstand. An unfamiliar name, Marcus, with a text that made my stomach drop. I stared at her phone for a long moment, then set it down exactly as I'd found it. There could be an innocent explanation, I told myself, but in that moment, something shifted inside me. A certainty formed, cold and hard. My security training kicked in. Observe, document, verify. I wouldn't confront without evidence. That's not who I am. I would be methodical about this, as I was with everything else in my life. When Rebecca emerged from the bathroom wrapped in a towel, I was already dressed for my business trip, my face a perfect mask of normalcy. Looking forward to seeing the Henderson contract finalized, I said, kissing her cheek, "I'll call you when I land in Chicago." She smiled, promised to miss me, told me she loved me. I nodded, picked up my suitcase, and walked out the door of our $1.2 million home in Westchester. But I didn't drive to the airport, and the Chicago trip that was about to be indefinitely postponed. My name is Daniel Parker, 38 years old, former military intelligence officer turned corporate security consultant. I specialize in threat assessment and information protection for Fortune 500 companies, identifying vulnerabilities, tracking information leaks, and developing counterintelligence strategies. I'm paid extremely well to think like someone who wants to exploit weaknesses in systems, human or digital. It's work that requires patience, attention to detail, and the ability to see patterns where others see coincidence. Rebecca and I had been married for 7 years. We met when she was a pharmaceutical sales representative, and I was transitioning from military to private sector work. She was vivacious, charming, and seemed genuinely interested in my methodical mind. "You make me feel safe," she'd said, on our third date. Maybe that was true then. Maybe it stopped being true at some point, and I missed the signs. After leaving the house, I drove 3 blocks away, parked on a side street, and accessed the home security system from my tablet. Our house had 8 cameras, exterior coverage, that I'd installed myself when we bought the place 4 years ago. Nothing inside. I'd always respected our privacy too much for that. I could see the driveway, front walkway, back patio, side entrances. I opened the scheduling app on my phone and rescheduled my flight for the following day. Then called my assistant. "Amanda, something's come up. I need to postpone Henderson until tomorrow. Clear my schedule for today." Then I waited. At 9:15 a.m., Rebecca left for work, right on schedule. She was a marketing director now, having left pharmaceutical sales 3 years ago. Her office was a 20-minute drive away. I gave her 30 minutes, then returned home. What I did next wasn't impulsive. I'd always maintained certain security protocols, even in my personal life. In the home office, behind a false panel in the bookshelf, I retrieved a small electronic device, a tracker, COMMERCIALLY, available but modified with military-grade firmware. I paired it with my phone, then placed it carefully under the chassis of Rebecca's car, which sat in the garage. While she drove her newer SUV to work, the sedan was only used for longer trips, which meant the tracker would remain dormant until needed. Then I methodically began examining our digital life. Rebecca and I shared a mobile plan but maintained separate accounts. We had joint finances, but I also maintained my own accounts, a habit from my military days when operational security was paramount. I logged into our cell provider's website using credentials Rebecca didn't know I had. 6 months of call and text records downloaded in seconds. I cross-referenced unknown numbers, revealing to that appeared with striking frequency. One belonged to Marcus Winters, a name I recognized vaguely as a client from her pharmaceutical days. The other belonged to Jeffrey Collins, her current marketing firm's creative director. A pattern emerged from the data: regular communications, often late at night or during her yoga classes on Tuesday and Thursday evenings, classes she'd started attending 9 months ago. I checked our joint calendar. Tonight was Tuesday. Yoga at 7 p.m. I created a secure folder on my encrypted laptop, adding the phone records and beginning documentation of my findings. Then I did something I'd never done before. I accessed our home router's logs. Rebecca wasn't technically sophisticated. She wouldn't know I could see every device that connected to our network. 2 unknown devices had connected regularly over the past 6 months, both male names in the device profiles, both connecting primarily on Tuesday and Thursday evenings, between 7:30 and 10 p.m. Both last connected 3 days ago. On Saturday afternoon while I was at the gym, the evidence was compelling but still circumstantial. I needed more. I left the house exactly as I'd found it and drove to the small corporate apartment my company maintained near the office. From there, I made several calls, setting pieces in motion without yet knowing exactly how I'd use them. By 6:30 p.m., I was parked on a quiet street 2 blocks from our house, waiting. At precisely 6:52 p.m., a black Audi pulled into our driveway. A man in his early 40s, athletic build, expensive watch catching the evening light, emerged and approached our front door. Rebecca opened it before he could knock, wearing the red dress I'd bought her for our anniversary. She kissed him with familiar passion, then ushered him inside. I took photographs using a telephoto lens, my hands steady despite the cold feeling spreading through my chest. 12 minutes later, a silver Tesla arrived. Another man, younger, more casually dressed, approached the house. Again, Rebecca opened the door immediately. Another embrace. The door closed. I sat motionless, processing, not one affair, but 2, concurrent. In our home, I checked the security feed on my tablet. The 3 of them moved to the kitchen, Rebecca pouring wine, laughing, touching both men with casual intimacy that spoke of established relationships. Then they moved upstairs, out of the camera's view. I didn't need to see more. I had confirmation. Now I needed a plan. Emotional reactions solve nothing. That's what my military training had drilled into me. Rage would cloud judgment. Immediate confrontation would provide only temporary satisfaction. I needed to understand the full scope of the betrayal before deciding how to respond. Over the next 3 days, I built a comprehensive picture. Marcus Winters, 43, divorced, senior sales director at Meridian Pharmaceuticals, Rebecca's former employer. They had worked together for 2 years, but the relationship appeared to have become personal only after she left the company. He had a reputation as a skilled salesman with flexible ethics, 2 DUIs in his past, both handled quietly by expensive lawyers, currently living in a luxury apartment in the city, financed largely by a generous divorce settlement his ex-wife had obtained after his first affair. Jeffrey Collins, 36, never married, creative director at Hathaway Marketing, Rebecca's current employer and direct colleague. Known in industry circles for his design talent and equally for office relationships, he'd been named in a sexual harassment settlement at his previous firm, though the details were sealed. He owned a Tesla he could barely afford and a condo. Mortgaged to the limit. Rebecca had been seeing both men for approximately 9 months. Based on text messages and location data, neither man appeared to know about the other. She had maintained separate conversations, scheduled them carefully to avoid overlap except for these occasional special evenings. She had told Marcus that I was emotionally distant, focused on work, to the exclusion of our marriage. She had told Jeffrey that I was controlling and jealous, tracking her movements. Different narratives tailored to elicit sympathy from each man. Most disturbing was what I found in our financial records. Rebecca had opened a separate account 6 months ago, to which she had been transferring small amounts from our joint savings. $500 here, $1,000 there. The total now approached $42,000. She had also recently inquired about the process for home equity loans, based on emails I recovered from her laptop backup. She was planning something beyond the affairs, an exit strategy perhaps, or leverage. By day 4, I had compiled everything into a secure file. Photographs, financial records, text message logs, location data. I had 3 options: confrontation, and likely divorce. Silent separation without addressing the betrayal. Or a more strategic response that would address not just the infidelity but the broader deception. I chose the third option. The plan came together with tactical precision. I would not confront Rebecca immediately. Instead, I would systematically dismantle the false reality she had constructed. Exposing the lies she had told each man about me, about our marriage, and, crucially, about her relationships with them, I would ensure she faced consequences, not just in our marriage, but professionally and financially. And I would do it without ever raising my voice or revealing the depth of my hurt. Step 1 began. With Marcus Winters, my research had revealed he was under consideration for a significant promotion at Meridian Pharmaceuticals, a position that would include oversight of compliance for the entire sales division. On Monday morning, I placed a call to Alicia Winters, his ex-wife. Mrs. Winters, my name is Daniel Parker. You don't know me, but I believe we share a common problem, Marcus. The conversation that followed was illuminating. Alicia had suspected Marcus was seeing someone during their divorce, but couldn't prove it. When I mentioned Rebecca's name, she fell silent for a moment. She was at our home for dinner parties. While we were still married, she finally said, her voice tight with controlled anger, "I'd like to propose a mutually beneficial arrangement," I said, explaining my situation and outlining what I needed from her. By the end of our conversation, Alicia had agreed to share documentation from their divorce proceedings, including evidence of Marcus falsifying expense reports to cover personal expenditures, a fact that had been sealed as part of their settlement. Step 2 focused on Jeffrey Collins. His financial overextension made him vulnerable, but I needed more leverage. Through industry contacts, I discreetly obtained details of the sexual harassment settlement from his previous employer. The pattern was consistent. Workplace relationships with subordinates, promises of career advancement. Rebecca wasn't a subordinate, technically, but their relationship still violated company policy at Hathaway Marketing, especially given his position of influence. Step 3 involved Rebecca's separate financial activities. I didn't touch the hidden account that would come later, but I did place a freeze on our home equity and joint investment accounts, citing suspicious activity that required investigation. This would prevent any sudden financial moves while I implemented the rest of my plan. With preparations complete, I turned my attention to timing. Rebecca believed I was in Chicago until Friday, giving me 3 more days. I used them methodically, setting each component in motion with precise coordination. On Wednesday morning, Meridian Pharmaceuticals, Compliance Office, and Board of Directors received an anonymous package containing detailed evidence of Marcus Winters' history of expense report manipulation, along with documentation of his current affair with a former colleague, a clear violation of company ethics policies, particularly problematic given his candidacy for the compliance position. Included was a USB drive with photographs of him entering my home, time-stamped text messages arranging meetings, and a statement from Alicia Winters regarding similar patterns during their marriage. That same day, Hathaway Marketing's HR department and CEO received a similar package detailing Jeffrey Collins' relationship with Rebecca, including evidence that they had used company time and resources for their affair. The package highlighted the similarity to his previous sexual harassment case, suggesting a pattern of behavior the company might want to address before it became public. I included photographs, text messages, and a timeline demonstrating the extent of the relationship. Thursday morning, I sent carefully crafted emails to both men from anonymous accounts. To Marcus, Rebecca is also sleeping with Jeffrey Collins from her office. They meet on Thursdays. Ask her about tonight's yoga class. To Jeffrey, Rebecca is also sleeping with Marcus Winters from Meridian. They meet regularly when her husband travels. Ask her about last Tuesday. I attached different photographs to each email, enough to prove the claim, but not revealing my full documentation. Then I waited. The cascade of consequences began within hours. Marcus Winters was called into an emergency meeting with Meridian's compliance team and placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Jeffrey Collins faced a similar situation at Hathaway. though with less immediate consequences given his less sensitive role. Both men, confronted with evidence they couldn't deny, began damage control, which included contacting Rebecca. I monitored her phone as the messages poured in, first confused, then accusatory, then angry. By Thursday afternoon, both men had pieced together that they'd been deceived, not just about me, but about each other. Rebecca's carefully constructed narrative collapsed under the weight of contradictory lies. She left work early, calling both men, attempting to salvage relationships that were already disintegrating as each man realized the extent of her deception. I returned home Thursday evening, a day earlier than expected. The security cameras showed Rebecca alone in the house, moving frantically between rooms, making calls that went unanswered. When I walked through the door at 7:30 p.m., she froze in the middle of the living room, phone in hand. "Daniel," she said, her voice unnaturally high. "You're home early." "Yes," I replied calmly, setting my suitcase by the stairs. The Henderson contract wrapped up sooner than expected. Her eyes darted around the room, looking for signs of what I might know. I gave her nothing, maintaining the same pleasant, slightly distracted demeanor I always had after business trips. "How was Chicago?" she asked, trying to sound normal. "Productive," I said, then added casually, "How was yoga?" A barely perceptible flinch. "Fine. The usual." I nodded, walking to the kitchen to pour a glass of water. "Anything interesting happen while I was gone?" "No," she said quickly, "just work. The usual." I turned to face her directly. "Rebecca, we need to talk about the $42,000 you've moved from our joint accounts." All color drained from her face. This wasn't what she'd expected. Not accusations about affairs, but about money. I'd deliberately chosen the angle she wouldn't be prepared for. "I can explain," she started. "I'm sure you can," I interrupted gently. "You're very good at explanations. Different ones for different people." I set my glass down and reached for my phone, pulling up the security app. "Like the explanation you gave Marcus about why you couldn't leave me." I turned the screen toward her, showing footage of Marcus entering our home. "Or the explanation you gave Jeffrey about my jealous, controlling nature." I swiped to footage of Jeffrey arriving minutes later. Rebecca sank onto the sofa, her carefully constructed world visibly collapsing around her. "How long have you known?" "Long enough," I said, maintaining my calm demeanor. "Long enough to understand this wasn't just about sex or loneliness. This was calculated. Rebecca, the separate account. The inquiries about home equity loans. The different stories you told each of them about me. What have you done?" she whispered, suddenly realizing there was more to this than just my discovery. "I've done what I do professionally," I replied. "I identified a threat, gathered intelligence, and neutralized it. Marcus is on administrative leave pending an investigation into ethics violations. Jeffrey is facing a similar situation, though his position isn't as sensitive. Both have received irrefutable evidence of your relationship with the other, and our finances have been secured against any sudden withdrawals or loans." Her face contorted with anger. "You had no right." "I had every right," I cut in, still calm. "Every right to protect myself from someone who was actively planning to defraud me financially while betraying me personally. The only thing I haven't done is expose you at Hathaway. That remains your secret for now." Her anger collapsed into tears, whether genuine or tactical, I couldn't tell anymore. "What happens now?" she asked. I sat in the armchair across from her. "Now we divorce, quietly and efficiently. You sign an agreement I've had prepared, which includes a non-disclosure clause about our marriage and its end. You retain your personal property, and the $42,000 you've already set aside, consider it a parting settlement. In exchange, you make no claims on the house, investments, or my future earnings. And if I don't sign, then the evidence goes to Hathaway's HR department. Tomorrow morning, your professional reputation joins your personal one." It wasn't a long conversation after that. Rebecca signed the papers the next day, in the office of the attorney I'd already retained. She moved out that weekend, taking only personal items and the contents of her separate account. Neither Marcus nor Jeffrey was interested in continuing their relationship once they discovered the extent of her deception. Both faced professional consequences. Marcus lost the promotion and was eventually asked to resign. Jeffrey received a formal reprimand and was placed on probation. As for Rebecca, she left Hathaway 2 months later, unable to face the subtle office rumors that inevitably spread despite my discretion. She moved to another state. Based on social media updates I occasionally see but no longer follow closely. 6 months after our divorce was finalized, I sold the Westchester house for a substantial profit and moved to a waterfront condo in Boston, where I'd accepted a position as security director for a major financial institution. The role came with a significant salary increase and equity package. I upgraded the security systems in my new home, more out of professional habit than lingering paranoia. Some might view my response as cold, calculated revenge. I see it differently. I didn't act from emotion, though the hurt was undeniably deep. I acted to ensure consequences proportional to actions. Rebecca, Marcus, and Jeffrey each made choices to betray, trust, to lie, to use others for their own purposes. My response simply ensured that those choices had appropriate repercussions. The military taught me that the most effective operations aren't about destruction, but about strategic realignment of power. Rebecca held all the power while her deception remained hidden. Once exposed, not just to me, but to the men she was manipulating and the systems she was exploiting, that power evaporated naturally. A year has passed since everything unfolded. I'm dating again, cautiously, with clearer boundaries and expectations. My career continues to advance. I've developed new security protocols for my personal and professional life, not out of lingering mistrust, but because patterns often repeat when we fail to implement systemic changes. I caught my wife cheating with 2 men, so I ruined them all and got my revenge. But the true revenge wasn't in the professional consequences they faced or the relationships that collapsed. It was in reclaiming my agency, refusing to be a victim, and methodically ensuring that deception and betrayal carried costs for everyone involved. In the end, I didn't just expose their affair, I exposed the fraudulent reality they'd all chosen to construct. The truth, as it often does in my line of work, proved to be the most powerful weapon of all.